The United States and Canada may be gearing up to fight over Canada's supply management system. U.S. President Donald Trump and his Pig for Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick are talking issue on how Canada protects its dairy industry. Ottawa and its dairy industry are vowing to protect supply management, saying that it's not on the table for talks with the U.S. Our news director, David Clement, has more on the dispute.
This grievance from Trump's pick for secretary and his comments about Canadian dairy are not new. They're not new with the United States, and they're not new with our other international trading partners. So historically, supply management has been a problem whenever Canada seeks to engage in free trade deals around the world, both in signing them, but also in maintaining them. So the first Trump administration, in negotiating the USMCA, expressed serious grievances about supply management. The Biden administration also shared that view, and now it looks like it could be again something the Americans are looking to see addressed when the USMCA comes up for renegotiation, which is about a year away. It's important to really understand what supply management is. It's a system of quotas, of tariffs. We're all familiar with tariffs now, and a cost of production formula that has existed since the 1970s. And what it really does and where it matters the most is on tariffs. So we allow for supply managed goods that would be milk, chicken, cheese, turkey, and eggs. So we allow roughly less than 5% of international products into the market. And what that means is that international products account for approximately 5% or less for all of those products. And the reason why they account for so little of our market, it's fundamentally different than how we treat any other agricultural product, is that we have very, very high tariffs on those goods from abroad um, once they meet a certain threshold, and that threshold is rather low. So for dairy, the tariffs range from 200 to 300%. For chicken, they're around 250 to 280%. For turkey, it's around 165%. And for eggs, it's around 150 to 165%. And so the Commerce Secretary, when he says that the Canadians are treating their dairy farmers horribly, there is some merit to that argument because we put exponentially higher tariffs on American goods in those sectors trying to come into Canada. Very important to highlight that there are roughly 10,000 farmers who own quota. That's essentially a license from the government to produce those products. Um, so Canadian policymakers are really going to have to ask themselves whether or not it's going to be worth it to potentially spark a trade war again when the pause ends, if what the Americans asking for are concessions on supply managed goods. And so couple other important facts that are worth highlighting. So dairy quota holder or dairy farm income over the last few years has really skyrocketed. So the average quota holder or milk farmer in Canada has a net income of $246,000. So that's after operating costs. And that for most people, I mean, the average income in Canada is $43,100. So we're talking about people who are making exponentially more than the average Canadian. The other important aspect here is the impact on Canadians. And so, yes, it's important in terms of trade negotiations and access, but the impact on Canadians is quite substantial. There's research from 2015 showing that supply management inflates the cost of goods for the average family upwards of $500 a year. Now, that may not sound like a lot, But in the context of Canadians who are living on the poverty line, the record number of people we've seen lining up at food banks, additional research on what that cost means shows that supply management by inflating prices, by limiting competition and inflating prices, pushes between 133,000 and 189,000 Canadians below the poverty line. So we have a rather regressive impact of supply management domestically because it is limiting competition and creating higher prices. On milk, Canadians roughly pay 20 to 30% more for milk than they do in the United States, where they don't have supply management. So, in terms of what happens next, it's still unclear. It's unclear the Trump administration's kind of demands throughout this looming trade war have shifted consistently. Fentanyl, the border, immigration, other trade issues. We'll see how much of a pressure point this is over the duration of the pause. But if this is something that the Americans dig their heels in on, we are going to have to ask some tough questions about the value of maintaining supply management versus the importance of avoiding 25% tariffs across the board.